Karla Jenkins in Scottsbluff, and we're standing with some cows in confinement, and there are some options that producers can use to feed something other than just straight alfalfa or something along those lines. What are the options of residues and biofuels that producers can use and still maintain a good body condition?
These cows are on a 30% distillers grains, wet distillers grains, 70% wheat straw diet on a dry matter basis. And this is a really good option right now because here in western Nebraska, our grass resources have pretty much run out and hay is very expensive. And so we are limit feeding these cows in confinement. This keeps them off the grass, keeps them from overgrazing a grass resource that we would need for later. And so they're eating about 19 pounds of that mixture a day, and they're maintaining their body condition very well. And these are late gestation cows. In fact, they're calving right now.
Well, how long can they stay on this diet, or do you change the diet once they go into calving or lactation?
And they can stay on it a long time because it's balanced to meet their energy requirements. And what we do with lactation then, because their requirement does increase at that point in time, is we just bump that up to about 23 pounds of dry matter for this 1,100-pound cow instead of the 19 at gestation. And the cows on the further end have already had some calves, and they're maintaining their body condition very nicely, even though they're already in lactation.
Obviously, with the conditions here, no feed is going to be real cheap this year, especially as we go into winter. But is this relatively cost-effective?
For western Nebraska right now, even though prices are very high, this is still one of the cheaper diets that we can develop. With our high prices of residues and byproducts and our trucking costs, because we're farther from everything, you include all that in it, we're still feeding these cows for about $1.34 a day in feed costs alone. That's not feeding cost or equipment cost. But if we were to limit feed alfalfa, we'd have to feed a little bit more because it's not quite as nutrient dense, and it would cost about $2.08 in just feed alone. So still a bit cheaper.
A lot of wheat harvest underway in this part of the state. Are there any options that producers have to plant back into it, especially in irrigated ground? I mean, obviously non-irrigated is probably going to be about it for the year, but in irrigated ground, can they plant anything back in to get anything out of it?
Now would be a good time to be looking at options like Sudan grass or some oats to plant those back into the wheat stubble where maybe irrigation is limited, but we can put on just a couple of inches in August and maybe a couple more in September and get that crop up and going, and then by fall be able to harvest a little bit more forage off that same ground, have it sit idle all winter and not affect your spring crop, and it may buy us several more tons of a forage resource we're pretty desperate to get right now.
Right, and tempered expectations, obviously it's not going to be probably a huge crop, but something that helps.
Anything's going to help right now.
What about wheat straw? Is there much availability for it?
There is some wheat straw available. One problem we've had this year is because we've had limited rainfall, or no rainfall, so to speak, and most of our irrigated wheat is on limited irrigation. The wheat straw itself is not as tall this year, and so that limits the amount that we have available. But that can be ground and mixed with dried distillers grains and water, or the distillers grain, the wet distillers. If you're in the valley and you have a beet pulp contract and you're going to have that this winter, you can mix that with the distillers and the wheat straw, and you can make a really nice, relatively inexpensive diet to maintain those cows and maybe not have to sell off so many.